Yeah, so a big thanks to Maharashtra Ophthalmological Society for organizing such wonderful events and modules for learning and giving us this opportunity to speak on, health and wellness, right? These are the basically the talks that we are going to go through one by one. With that, let me give some disclaimers that this information provided here is not a replacement for any medical advice. This talk is about general health and not disease specific. So, anybody suffering from certain specific diseases, this is not the forum where we can guide you specifically. All references are listed, can be cross checked. Medical knowledge, we all know, is always evolving. We are only presenting and interpreting the data that is available currently, and we are always open to learn more. All right. So, I've been on 7 years of a plant-based diet, and in spite of the benefits I've experienced, still when people meet me, they ask me, where do you get your proteins from? Right? Thankfully, there are other plant-based animals who are never asked this question, surprisingly. So, what is this protein thing that seems to be affecting only humans? I'll just try and simplify it today. So, how much protein do we need? So, meta-analysis of nitrogen balance studies have been done, which have given the average requirement to around 0.66, and two standard deviation above that is the RDA, which is around zero point 0.8 grams per kg per day, which will cover most of the population, right? But this is decided by the body weight of a person, okay? The grams per kg per day. So not affected by age, gender, or even physical activity. And not just your actual body weight, it is affected by the ideal body weight of a person. Because if you're carrying excess fat around, doesn't mean you need excess protein for that. So based on your height, there is a certain ideal weight that you should be having. Even if you're 20 kgs over that, it doesn't matter. Your protein requirements will depend on your lean body mass, not the excess fat. So for somebody who is say 5'8", weighing ideally should be weighing 65 kgs. So roughly 65 grams of proteins per day should be sufficient. Okay. But isn't taking more protein better? What's the harm in taking more? Well, proteins are not stored in our body. Okay. Anything that is excess will be excreted in the urine or stored as fat, which we certainly don't want, which is why systematic reviews and meta-analysis of 74 RCTs comparing high and low protein intake found non-significant effects with no significant dose response with higher protein intake. And they cautioned that they need to be weighed against the potential for harms because overconsumption of proteins can lead to health problems. This is a Cochrane Library Review study, which has shown that excess protein intake at the time of pregnancy increases the risk of small for gestational age babies. Small babies, infants who are given excess proteins actually end up with higher BMI and body fat percent in childhood. And adults who consume excess protein have increased mortality, risk of diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, especially if it is animal protein. And they have identified that increased risk is maximum with protein intakes above 20 to 23% of your energy, which roughly equates to 1.6 grams per kg per day. So the protein intake compared to the risk of mortality curve is like this. Initially, it starts going down. That is, the mortality reduces till you reach 1 gram per kg per day. Beyond 1.6 grams per kg per day, the risk actually starts increasing. Sweet point is somewhere around 1.1 gram per kg per day. So we know the bare minimum, we know the safe maximum. So an optimum intake would be anywhere between 1 to 1.2 grams per kg per day. So moderation is the key. But aren't Indians protein deficient? Because we keep hearing that all the time. But if you look at reputed institutes who have done this survey across India, NIN Institute of Hyderabad, since 1975, they have mapped multiple studies. And what have they found? The average Indian consumes around 1 to 1.3 gram per kg per day. And this is the very recent report they have released, June 2025. Average intake is 68 grams per day, which is actually what we sufficiently need. The primary bottleneck they identified is energy inadequacy and not the protein. And consumption of pulses and legumes, which are protein sources, are actually less than 50% of what is recommended. So the key takeaway on proteins I'm going to give you first is your calories should be adequate. Those who are not getting enough nutrition will also not get enough proteins. So there is scope for improvement, but it's not as bad as it is made out to be. But can we get all this protein from plants? Because people are worried that only animal foods can give you proteins. So for this, we need to understand this small protein energy ratio concept. It is the percentage of your total calories which are coming from proteins. So let's assume a 35-year-old Indian male who's sedentary, 5 feet 8 inches. So the ideal body weight for that person should be 65 grams. So protein needed would be 65 grams. Now, 1 gram protein we know gives 4 calories. So 65 grams, if he consumes from proteins, he should get 260 calories from the proteins. But the recommended diet for such a person is around 2200 calories, which means 260 calories of 2200 coming from proteins gives a PER of 12%. I hope everybody is with me on this. What it simply means that any diet of 2200 calories, so enough calories if the person takes, which have a PER of more than 12%, will provide the necessary proteins. We don't have to complicate things much. We just have to look at foods which have PER of more than 12%. It is as simple as that. In fact, based on PER, a food is called a source of protein if PER is more than 12, and a high protein source if PER is more than 20%. Fruits cannot be considered as protein sources because their PER is less than 10, but they have protein. It's not that they don't have protein. Grains are sources of proteins. Nuts and seeds are sources of proteins. Vegetables are high protein sources, anything between 20 to 50%. Legumes are high protein sources, anything between 20 to 50%. Then why are we having this protein craze? The reason is this is what we are eating today, right? That is the problem. This has no proteins and improper proportions. We are having more refined cereals and less legumes and veggies. See the typical plate that people eat. This has to change to something like this. The cereal portions have to go down and we have to shift from refined to whole cereals. So the right ratio of legumes to cereals and original whole foods have to be taken. Next question is, okay, we are getting from plants, but isn't meat a better source of protein? Absolutely it is. You can get 2 times as much protein from meat. That's true. But more isn't always better. Sometimes it's just more. And it is the quality that matters more than quantity. So if you compare animal proteins versus plant proteins, and if you look at the evidence for metabolic diseases, what does it say? And with short of time, so we will just give, I'm just putting here a very few studies, but there's a whole lot of database out there. Total proteins and animal proteins increase risk of diabetes. Plant proteins reduce the risk of diabetes. What about mortality? Animal proteins increase the risk of cardiovascular mortality. Plant proteins reduce the risk of cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. Animal proteins increase the risk of hypertension in elders. Plant proteins reduce the risk of hypertension. Animal proteins increase the risk of CKD. High animal to plant protein ratio. So higher your animal protein and lower your plant protein leads to bone loss and fractures. But that's not all. When we are eating food, right? We are not just picking out the proteins from any food source and eating. So we have to look at the complete package. So with that extra protein from animal foods, what else extra you will get? You'll get saturated fats, cholesterol, hormones, antibiotics, and contaminants. You will get a lot of toxic and inflammatory products, which are carcinogenic, mutagenic, cardiotoxic, neurotoxic, nephrotoxic. Plus, you will increase your risk of systemic diseases and you will have a deranged gut microbiome. The gut microbiome's importance in our whole system is just being recognized. We have just uncovered the tip of the iceberg. Every day we are learning new functions of that. And what do you get extra with plant foods? Fiber. And all these benefits of eating fiber, which is the food for these microbiota, is completely missing in animal foods. Plus, you get a lot of polyphenols and micronutrients and complex carbs, okay, and an optimized gut microbiome with none of these added risks. We just have to see which option looks better. So try and get all your proteins from plants as much as possible. What about athletes and elderly? Don't they need extra protein? Well, there are many athletes who believe in the power of plant-based proteins. They have been winning gold medals at Olympics, and this is nothing new. They've been doing it since the 1900s. We are just not aware of it. Plant foods are known to increase blood flow to muscles, improve muscle efficiency, reduce inflammation. Recovery is the biggest advantage of an athlete. That is what they look for. What about the elderly? Well, muscle is a use it or lose it kind of a tissue. If you don't use it, you will lose it. and elderly lose muscle faster. Okay, which is why their people tell them, okay, as you grow old, your proteins have to be increased. Now, this was a Protage study group with a lot of geriatric associations coming together. They used a different method of calculating amino protein requirements, the indicator amino acid oxidation method. Even with all this, they concluded that the elderly need around 1 to 1.2 gram per kg per day. So it's not something extravagant that they need to consume. But what about supplementing more protein? Protein supplementation as a standalone intervention for healthy older individuals is ineffective completely. It is the resistance training that is effective. Resistance training induced improvements not enhanced by increasing protein foods or supplements. Well, there are studies which show that protein supplementation improves lean body mass. But what type of lean body mass? It is the truncal lean body mass which is increased. Now, what is that? What is truncal lean body mass? It includes the weight of the liver, kidneys, connective tissue, and water content also. When you consume more proteins, water is also retained more. So that is not the right way to look at lean body mass. If you want to look at muscle strength, you have to look at the appendicular lean mass. That is your limbs. That is where there is no confounding factor involved. And what have they found? When they did a thigh muscle cross-sectional area, did not change whether you took the recommended allowance or double that. Whey protein supplementation, 30 grams per day extra, did not improve muscle mass or physical function. Again, meta-analysis of RCTs have shown positive effect of resistance training, no role of protein or essential amino acid supplements. Dr. Mayur Morekar, who's a fitness freak, requested me to put in a word on creatine. Right? What is creatine? It's the number one supplement which people are taking now. Why? Because first of all, body makes its own creatine. Okay. If you supplement, body has to make less. That's just about it. Less muscle creatine is not shown to be equivalent to less performance. Okay. Then why do people take it? The advantage is extra creatine in muscle delays fatigue. So it allows athletes to train extra. So instead of 5 repetitions, if you take creatine, you will be able to do 6 repetitions. Okay. Without exercise, it is meaningless. It is only for those who are exercising and who are looking at gaining absolute, precision. Even talking of athletes, those 0.1 and 1% improvement also makes a huge difference. But it is also promoted to prevent sarcopenia, even though creatine levels are similar in biopsies of old and young muscle. A multifactorial double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial compared leucine, whey, soy, creatine plus whey in women and women. This was as best as it can get. And what did they find? Whey, soy, leucine, creatine, nothing enhanced the resistance training induced benefits. So the training gave benefits. The all supplements didn't do any further magic on it, whether it is in women or in men. So who should take creatine? Athletes who want to delay fatigue, elderly who are progressively strength training, who are looking at achieving higher and higher goals. They can benefit around 3 grams per day, right? Of over 30 years of research on protein supplementation has shown that only resistance exercise gives benefit in elderly people. Bottom line, muscles are built in the gym. If you don't exercise, no amount of kitchen food is going to help you. This is what I eat in the entire day. Of course, there are variations over the different days. No protein supplements, no dairy, no meat, no eggs, no fish. I don't even regularly go to the gym. Not that there's anything wrong in going there, but 30 minutes of home exercise. This is what I eat. Roughly, I get 1.23 grams per kg per day. My fiber intake is more than adequate and less than 2.6% of saturated fat. Many people think that a vegan or a plant-based meal is more expensive. My per meal cost is around 70 rupees. Strength training is what finally matters. So this is the takeaway. Crops, calories should be adequate in the right ratio, original foods, plant protein sources, and strength training. Although it is the last, it is the most important part of the entire thing. So to summarize, yes, muscles are of course important. Proteins are also important, but other things also matter. It is your metabolic health and longevity Exercise way more important than any supplement that you can think of. Instead of asking where do you get your protein, the right question is where do you get your fiber from? And if there's one single message you want to take away from all this, how much ever protein one decides to take, plant proteins are way better for us than animal proteins, whether it is for our body, for our planet, for the future of our children, or for the animals. Thank you so much.